Joe Rogan talks to Dr. Stephen Meyer. What's up, guys? This is Ivan with Reformanda Radio, and today I want to talk to you about a conversation that Joe Rogan had with Dr. Stephen Meyer. Now, if you don't know who Dr. Stephen Meyer is, he is a philosopher of science. He is over at the Discovery Institute. He's written books such as Darwin's Dilemma, Signature in the Cell, most recently, The Return of the God Hypothesis. I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Meyer at one point. Now, a lot of us have been seeing that Joe Rogan, over the years, has experienced a little bit more of a change when it comes to Christianity. For a while, he was very antagonistic towards it, and it seemed like he wouldn't have any Christians on. Lately, his stance towards Christianity has actually softened. He's had some Christians on. And so when I saw Stephen Meyer was going to be on, I was very excited because I think this is the very first time that he's actually had a Christian scholar on the program. I want to key in on a couple of things that their discussion focused on. Now, they talked about intelligent design, they talked about the problem of evil, they talked about biblical morality and all of these things. And so there's just a couple of clips that I want to focus on. So let's check out that first clip.
It's very hard to keep up with you. But when you're talking about this process and this first of all, I want to go back one step further. You were saying something about, and I'm paraphrasing, but whatever this intelligent thing is, creating us somehow or another in its image, or somehow or another thinking the way it thinks? How did you say that again?
Yeah, this was the idea of the early scientists who got science going. The way they've talked about it was the intelligibility of the universe. It was intelligible. It could be understood by us because our minds had been made in the image or likeness of the creator of the universe itself.
So this is a very important question. Why is the universe intelligible the way it is? Why is it that our minds can actually apprehend facts, logic, meaning, all of these things? And so the Christian worldview is the worldview that can make sense out of these things because our mind has been created by an intelligent source. That source being the God of the Bible. The Christian God has created us in his image so that we can apprehend the world around us. A lot of people have made this argument and have seen the problem with our minds and why they are able to apprehend the world as it is if we are only monkeys. If we've gone from being fish to philosophers and we're only animals, then how is it that we can trust our animalistic thinking if we are only animals? What gives us the ability to be able to apprehend the world as it is, take in information, have memories, have experiences the way we do? The Bible gives us an answer to this because we're created in the image of God. We're created to think rationally. How can we trust our rational faculties if we are just evolved animals? Because there have been many people that have pointed out that evolution doesn't necessarily select for truth. It just selects for survival. And so how is it, again, that we can trust our rational faculties if we are just animals?
It's possible that our minds are complex and curious. And so we're trying to figure out what all these things are and what DNA is and what molecules. Now we're trying to figure out the very fiber of existence itself. What is it made out of? Wouldn't any curious, self-aware creature start to contemplate these things?
Yes, any self-aware creature would want to see patterns in the world and try to make sense out of them. But the real question is, why do they do that? Why is it that we are pattern-seeking individuals and we want to seek data? We want to seek after truth. Well, the reason is because we're created in God's image. God made us to be people of the truth and not people of lies. We're supposed to follow truth. We're supposed to follow the evidence where it leads. And that makes sense on the Christian framework.
If it really is an intelligent force that made us to think the way it thinks, why would it have war? Why would it have murder? Why would it have all the horrific crimes that we see, drug addictions? Why would it create us in a form like that?
So this is a question that Joe's going to ask repeatedly. Why is it that our minds are created in such a way that they will do things that are evil? And so the first thing I would want to say is, by what standard do you say that anything is good and that anything is evil? What framework gives you the foundation to be able to judge between good and evil? The atheistic, materialistic worldview, evil doesn't exist. And there are lots of atheists and philosophers that have made this point. There is no good, there is no evil. And so how can there be a problem of evil when evil itself doesn't exist. And so why create a mind that is able to do that? Well, Stephen's going to give the traditional free will explanation of that. And that answers a part of it, but I think the more broader explanation that Scripture gives is that God ordains every single thing that happens, and in His sovereignty, He ordains the good and the bad, and therefore the good and the bad have purposes to them. In the backdrop of evil, God's glory and God's goodness and mercy are magnified in the midst of that backdrop. And so you could think about the universe, and a lot of scientists have pointed out that our universe is dark. The darkness of our universe actually helps us to look into the cosmos and to make better conclusions and get better data in the universe because of the backdrop of the darkness. And so what I would say is that's kind of a similar analogy to what we have in Christianity. In the backdrop of evil, in the backdrop of sin, you see God's grace and mercy more clearly. And I think you see that in a scripture like in Romans 9, where it says you have vessels of dishonor being made so that the vessels of mercy would know the mercies and the grace and riches, the glory of God.
I mean, the background of this. Let's start with the first question. I'll get to the second question.
Okay.
It's a equally profound and good question. The historians of science have asked a question. It's the why then, why there question. We've had all these great civilizations. Egyptians made the pyramids, as you and I were talking about. We had the Chinese had gunpowder. The Romans built aqueducts. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, in Western Europe, in the 16th and 17th centuries, and I think the antecedents for that go back a little further, you get these very systematic methods for studying nature arising. And you get this concern to use mathematics to describe the order in nature. And you get this incredibly productive, historians of science call it the scientific revolution. Something really dramatic changing. Mm-hmm. And it's different than other civilizations. And as they've examined what happened, they said, well, the material, the material substrate or the things you would need to do science were in all the other cultures, and there were many great cultures. But this systematic method of studying nature uniquely arose in Western Europe in a particular time, in a particular context. And many, many historians of science have come to the conclusion that the thing that was the difference that made the difference was the worldview, was the philosophical assumptions of those Western European scientists who were almost entirely coming out of a Judeo-Christian worldview. And one of the key assumptions that they had was that systematic study of nature was actually possible. It's actually very hard to do science. It's very hard to see a pattern in what can initially seem to be a chaotic jumble of sense data. And these thinkers had the conviction that there were such patterns, there was rationality, there was order behind things, because there was a God who had made the universe to be orderly and to be understood. So that was just one of those thought differences or differences in thinking that historians have identified as a key feature that explains why the scientific revolution happened where it did. And that's not to say that the only people that can do science once it gets going are people of religious faith, but it is to say that the people with a particular religious faith had a reason to pursue science that apparently other cultures did not have to the same degree.
I think this puts to bed this idea that science and religion are at odds. Because if you look historically, the people, the scientists that created this scientific method, as we know it today, were Christians. And they had this idea that there was a goal for the universe. There was order to what we see around us. In theology, many people have observed that God has revealed himself in two different ways. One in natural revelation and the other in special revelation, which is in scripture. Natural revelation is what we see in the world all around us. And so what these scientists believed is that by scientific inquiry, they were getting to know the very mind of God. God had created a rational universe, an intelligible universe that you can go out and actually discover things. You could actually predict the future and make scientific inquiries and scientific hypotheses based on past observances, because the world was created with order and because there's this principle of the uniformity of nature. This idea that the future will be like the past, which is at the very foundation of scientific inquiry. You can't do science without this idea that there is an actual order to the universe. If we actually live in a universe that's random, chaotic, has no purpose, ask yourself this question: would you be able to do science in that world? Which worldview gives you the best framework for doing science? One where you have a rational order, one where there's an intelligible universe and you have an intelligent mind created by an intelligent creator, or a random universe with no purposes and no goal and no actual foundation to believe that the future will be like the past, because there is actual no order.
Do we know that for a fact, though? Because there's a lot of evidence that we've lost some civilizations. We've lost a lot of their knowledge. The burning of the Library of Alexandria, we don't really know that much about what they knew. Obviously, they had some incredibly complex mathematics if they built the pyramids. We know that. We know there had to be measurement.
We lost them. Where are they? They're not here. They didn't endure. And this is one of the hallmarks of truth. Truth endures. The grass withers and the flowers fade, but the word of our God endures forever. We lost them for a reason. That's why they've been relegated to the dustbin of history, because they're no longer here anymore. And that says a lot about the truthfulness of what they believed in. All right, guys, let me know what you thought in the comments section. And until next time, to God alone be the glory.